Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Si-Jin Kim, and I'm studying master's program Sustainable Resource Management. And I won't be able to join the presentation in person tomorrow. I'm filming this on Monday because I'm currently joining a field excursion for a week from a course called World Soil Resources. So it's a pity that I won't be able to interact with the audiences and get the feedback and do the discussion after the presentation in person. However, I hope you can focus on my presentation and after that, give me some feedbacks of my research proposal. So, my research proposal is about the correlation between the accessibility to urban greenery and heat vulnerability of residents in two different areas in Daejeon Metropolitan City, South Korea. Here are the contents. So, from the structure of the research proposal that the professor provided us with, I just added the background information and introduction in the beginning. So, before starting, I have to tell you background information about the apartment complex in Korea. Well, I only heard the perception of living in the apartment complex in the US that is regarded a sort of lower class thing. However, in Korea, as you can see in this picture, apartment complex looks pretty new, right? So it means that in Korea, living in an apartment complex means that you're actually from a higher class. It's because apartment complex has newer and private facilities only for the residents. However, the private houses, they don't really have it and it's pretty old. Now we go to research area. I chose Daejeon Metropolitan City, located in South Korea, which is also my hometown. Daejeon has approximately 1.4 million inhabitants. And as you can see in this picture, is located in the middle of South Korea. So it's a center or a hub for the transportation. And I will tell you a brief history about Daejeon. Well, Daejeon was a completely planned. Daejeon is a completely planned city by the Japanese people during the Japanese colonization. Since it's located in the middle of South Korea, for the Japanese people to put the railway, Daejeon was a great place for them to carry the natural resources and food from Korea to the port and to Japan. So back then, more than 90% of the inhabitants of Daejeon were Japanese. And after their liberation, there was Korean War in South Korea. No, I mean in between North Korea and South Korea. And there were a lot of refugee camps during the Korean War in Daejeon. And with the industrialization of Daejeon, it became a metropolitan city of Korea since 1995. And those two areas I would like to compare in Daejeon is Daedong and Dunsan-dong. Dong in Korean means district. Dunsan-dong has about 4 times more population and area-wise is 6 times bigger than Daedong. And most of the government complex in Daejeon is located in Dunsan-dong. So there are a lot of entertainment, health, educational facilities, and even parks. And Daedong doesn't really have much infrastructure than few schools. And the redevelopment has been discussed since more than 30 years ago, but nothing really happened so far. Now you see those satellite pictures from Google Earth. This is with the same scale, by the way. And you see in Taedong, there is one and only park in Taedong called Sky Park. Why it's called Sky Park? Is because it's located on top of the hill. Taedong is a hilly district. And here, maybe you have already noticed there's a river next to Tunsan-dong and a lot of parks for the citizens. Very green, right? Compared to Taedong, Tunsan-dong is pretty flat because there used to be a US Air Force base, so they had to flatten the area. And these pictures are with large scale. And now you can clearly see Tunsan-dong on the right side has a lot of apartment complexes, while Taedong has a lot of individual small houses. And I already explained the background knowledge in the beginning. So you can already tell Tunsan-dong is where all the higher class people live in Daejeon. Maybe not all, but most of them. Now we go to problem statement and motivation. To sum up all the things I've already said in the previous slides, compared to Tunsan-dong, Taedong has less green space ratio, less developed area, and most importantly, less accessibility to green space because the one and only park is located on top of the hill. And Taedong has less apartment complex, less private education infrastructure. Well, why the private education infrastructure matters? Now I have to explain the after school academic culture called Hagwon culture in Korea. It is seen as normal and expected for students to attend private academies after school for most of the subjects that we learn in school. Without the access to these academies, students are at an automatic disadvantage when applying for universities and eventually entering the workforce. So, Taedong has less private education infrastructure, which means that the students in Taedong have an automatic disadvantage. And regarding the accessibility to green space, one day I met an old lady living in Taedong while walking up to the sky park, and she told me that most of her neighbors cannot even go to the park, even though they live very close to the park due to the problems on their legs. And those conversations that I had with the old lady motivated me to come up with this research idea. For the state of knowledge and research gap, there are quite some government research and publications about how to improve the quality of living in the marginalized area or less developed area. And for the research gap, unfortunately, most of those research focused on Seoul region and they focus on either only on urban greenery, which is environmental sciences, or social sciences. So none of the research really integrated those two fields of studies, especially in Daejeon. So my goal and objectives for my research proposal is to find out the correlation between the amount of urban greenery and the heat vulnerability of residents by comparing two regions' PET, which is physiologically equivalent temperature in those two areas in Daejeon, and eventually to suggest heat adaptation measures under climate change in Daedong area. I have three research questions regarding this research proposal. First, is there a correlation between the amount of urban greenery, the urban greenery ratio, and the heat vulnerability and PET? Second, does accessibility to urban parks make heat vulnerability of residents lower? And lastly, how do residents think about the accessibility of urban parks in their area? For the procedure and methods, I am going to collect the data from the statistics provided by the government, like weather and green space area. And I would conduct resident survey and the interview. And as like we learned in one of those classes, I would like to collect the PET measurements data with those devices such as Climate Backpack. And for the methods, I would love to calculate the PET and the heat vulnerability index. And with those calculations, I would love to conduct some statistical analysis, for example, correlation analysis. Now we go to the broader impacts. My research could fill the gaps of heat vulnerability and urban green space research in Korean cities other than Seoul. And it could possibly influence climate change adaptation policy of marginalized area in Daejeon metropolitan city or further in other cities but haven't been really researched. And to the last, I have questions to you from my side. I hope I can get some answers and feedbacks. My friend Magnus, who will be sitting in the classroom, will collect some answers and feedbacks for me and let me know after. So my questions are, will it be too complicated to integrate resident survey and interview in the research? And how many residents should I interview to get the reliable results? Also, is accessibility to urban greenery too subjective? I'll wait for your answers or feedbacks. These are the references. Thank you for listening my presentation and hope you all enjoy the presentation session.